Yeah. Well, I always say, if you come before the starts, then you get all these conversations. We are in chapter 1 of the service, part 4. We're dealing with the service of Hashem. We're on page 471, and we're on the first chapter called the part of Avoda, or the section of service. And it says the Ramchal divides the divine service into 2 broad categories, each of which will be elaborated upon in his work. So the service of Hashem in general is divided into 2 categories. The first is the study of the Torah, and the second is the performance of the MItzvot. So he explains that this will be discussed in chapter 2, namely the study of the Torah. This category includes not only learning for the sake of acquiring the knowledge necessary for the performance of the mitzvot, but also Torah study for its own sake. And now you have to go to the second performance of mitzvot. This is not necessarily limited to physical actions, as we will learn below. It includes cognitive and verbal activities as well. So the Ramchal introduces the different elements involved in performance of the mitzvot. The first is, so the performance of mitzvot is subdivided into 4 categories: constant, daily, periodic, and contingent. So the Ramchal gives examples of each of the 4. The constant mitzvah is what a person is constantly obliged to do, such as the love and fear of Hashem. So he says the Ramchal introduces mitzvot above. And it says part 148 is as powerful means for bringing a person close to Hashem. His description of them there it was as follows. He said, quote, he should reflect upon the greatness of Hashem's exaltedness and the extreme insignificance of man. In this manner, he will submit himself before Hashem and feel embarrassment before his exaltedness, and he will yearn and desire to be among those who serve him, to be praiseworthy by praising him, and be exalted by his greatness. So that's the first one, constant mitzvah. The daily mitzvah is what we are obligated to do every day. It's performed at specific times daily, unlike the constant mitzvot, which are meant to be performed continuously throughout the day. Then, which means that the sacrifices during the time of the Beis HaMikdash, and nowadays the prayers and the recital of the Shema. And he says the sacrifice is performed at specific. I'm sorry, I said that already. Okay. So the periodic mitzvah is one that one is obligated to fulfill at specific times during the year, such as Shabbat and the Yom Tov. And the contingent mitzvah is what one is obligated to do based upon circumstances that bring it about, such as separating challah and maaser, redeeming the firstborn son, and so on. So the Ramchal gives 3 examples of daily mitzvot, namely prayer, recital of Shema, and the sacrifices. The sacrifices were relevant only in the times of the Beit HaMikdash, the temple. The mitzvah of the prayer and Shema are applicable even today. The mitzvot, these mitzvot, namely the contingent ones, are conditional upon their circumstances. One can live his entire life without being obligated to perform one of them. The mitzvah of challah is commanded in Bamidbar, Ma'aser Rishon, the first tithe in Numbers, and redeeming the firstborn in Numbers. Again, you have to have a firstborn in order to redeem them. If you don't have a firstborn, you can't redeem. Firstborn son, excuse me. If you don't have mice, if you don't have farm, if you don't have first of all, if you're not living in Israel, and then that's number one. Or if you're living in Israel and you don't have a farm, you'll never complete, and you don't own animals, you'll never complete the mitzvah, you'll never fulfill the mitzvah of Ma'aser Rishon. And if I don't eat bread, or the 5 grains, and I don't make a dough, I will never have the mitzvah of separating the challah. Of course, if I'm a Kohen, as we are, when we were in Israel, we would not separate the challah because that's our portion anyway. So if you're married to a Kohen, you don't have to separate the challah. So that's what he's talking about. Each of these four categories contains commandments and prohibitions, which means positive and negative commandments, and these are the very same as turn from evil and do good. So he says, for example, regarding periodic mitzvot, we are commanded to perform positive mitzvot such as hearing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, and warned against violating negative mitzvot such as the prohibition against eating on Yom Kippur. Each of these four categories of mitzvot contain positive and negative mitzvot. In Tehillim it says, turn from evil by observing the negative mitzvot and do good by performing the positive mitzvot. The Ramchal states why there is a need for these activities. On the whole, the primary purpose of all of these matters has been explained in part 1, chapter 4. And he said, whether Ramchal wrote, now the root of the entire concept of serving Hashem is that a person should always turn towards his Creator. That is, he should know and understand that he was created only to attain a state of devekus with his Creator. By the way, this you can never forget this in all of the conversations that we will have throughout the years, and all that we study Torah, and all that we deal with politics and everything else. We have to always remember, the bottom line is that the entire reason for our existence is to have devekus with Hashem, to attain that devekus. That's it. So anything that's going to pull us away from that, and that's the fun of the politics, that's the fun of work, that's the fun sometimes of Torah. It can pull you away from what you really want to get to, because you get caught up in the argument of it, and you don't realize that there has to be a practical purpose coming out of this, that I have to say that everything is from Hashem. So it's interesting, just to get to one thing on politics, when whoever the president is, prime minister, leader, king, whatever, that person is picked by God. Whether or not we like it, that person is picked by God. And God controls that person and what they're going to do. If you want some evidence of that, an amazing thing is the prime ministers of Israel. They are the ultimate proof that God pulls the strings, because a lot of them were in, like Begin, Sharon, they were all what they call hawks, right-wing hawks. Yet when they got into the position of prime minister, they suddenly folded and were willing to give territory away and willing to do all sorts of things that you would never have thought an Ariel Sharon or a Nachum Begin can do, or even a Rabin. You never would have thought that. And yet they do it, and it seemingly goes against logic. And what's going on is that God is, the Gemara says, is controlling those people. The higher we get in power, the less free will we have. That's what it says. So for all of the presidents and all that they signed their executive orders and all that they messed up the ballot boxes and everything else, all the corruption that goes into it, as you would say in Chicago, vote early, vote often, and then the people who are dead have a vote now too. Baruch Hashem, okay, Techiyat Hametim, the ultimate. So but really, this is all something that we have to understand is coming from Hashem. It's controlled by God, and the only reason God's doing that is that we should realize that we have to have a connection with Hashem. And that's why everything happens. Also, that we can forge a relationship with God, saying, Hashem, we have done what we can. We got up early. We went to the ballot box. We cast our ballot. We recognize it's in your hands. Please do that which is proper for you to do and proper for us. And in that case, we throw into God's desire, we recognize God's power in that and say it's all up to you. We've done what we can do. We've done our hishtadlus. We've made our decision. We've tried it. But our success or failure is totally on you, not on us. We can't take credit for that. We can't take the problems of the world upon us. That's what you're really trying to establish, trying to get down to that. And it's, by the way, if somebody can actually do that, it's very difficult to do. It's very freeing. Because we realize that That what does a doctor do? You think of a doctor. She goes through a whole operation. They do everything by the book. The patient should have lived, and what happens? Patient dies. The doctor takes it very hard. Why would he take it hard? I mean, it happens. God didn't. God said no. Period. God said no. Time to come home. He did everything perfectly. He did what you're supposed to do. God said no. So what it's supposed to say, and that's why a doctor should say a prayer before performing the operation, and the patient should say a prayer too. Both of them basically the same prayer. Hashem, please guide his hands. Hashem, please guide my hands. Okay, and please make this successful. We're supposed to give it to God, recognize God in that, and once we do, we've done everything we can. So that's all we can do.
That leads to a side discussion about participation in worldly things like elections, but.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You shouldn't put all your time and all your effort into arguing out the different sides of it. You have to get it clear what you want to do, understand what's going on, and you cast your ballot. If you win or lose, if your side wins or loses, you have to understand that it's not you. You did what you could. And now Hashem is going to, again, all depends on how connected we are, how many mitzvot we're doing, how many Bnei Noach are following the Torah too, how many people are really connected. If we're all connected, the world runs properly. If it doesn't, well, we have global warming for that. Okay, so we have all the other stupidities that get in our way and torture us and tell us, well, we can't use that lawnmower. That lawnmower pollutes more than my car. Think about that. That's what they told me. And a cow flatulence is destroying our ozone. I mean, it's unbelievable how many things are just destroying our planet. It survives all these years while the cows are flatulent, but now it's destroying it. Okay, but that's my point.
It's my SUV.
Your SUV, your truck, everything. But that's my point. If we really have that connection with Hashem and we are following Hashem's dictates, and we accept that and we understand what we're doing, so then Hashem will protect us against our own stupidities, and our leaders will do what they should be doing instead of making wars with us. That's my political comment. Okay. So, and let's go on now. See, Bill, that was in the first 12 minutes. I gave my political comment. I didn't have to wait 20 minutes for that one. Okay. So it says, they've been warned, right? So again, the primary purpose is for all these matters is to get closeness to Hashem, turning towards Hashem and seeking His closeness based upon the methods that He has legislated for us, in order that we may come close to Him and attain a state of Devekus with Him. And again, this is accomplished through the fulfillment of the positive mitzvot and the utilization of a world in a way that is proper for one's needs. We must endeavor to remove all the impediments of evil that attach themselves to the darkness of the physicality and of this world, to exert ourselves to come closer to Hashem, until we attain a state of Devekus with Him and perfect ourselves through His perfection. Devekus with Hashem is the goal. Fulfilling that goal leads a man's perfecting himself through Hashem's perfection. So that's what we're trying to do. For this is Hashem's whole desire and the entire purpose of having created the world, as we have mentioned. So the Ramchal explains what will be discussed in the next few chapters. However, the specific details are in accordance with the laws legislated for mankind and the world in all of their dimensions. She says the specific details of mitzvah correspond to the specific makeup of man and the creation, and with the ways given to man to completely perfect himself, which is, the Ramchal said above, that the details of all the mitzvot correspond to the various dimensions of the human personality that require perfecting. Rav Chaim Friedlander explains that each mitzvah leads one on a path toward the attainment of Devekus to Hashem. That this Devekus, in and of itself, is the reward of observing mitzvot. Each aspect of creation is a vessel for serving Hashem, and thus assisting man in the perfection of all reality. And then it says to perfect the entire creation with him, and as arranged in all its divisions through the hierarchical classification of inanimate phenomena, plant life, animal kingdom, and man. But it's in its roots and in its branches. Both in its roots and its branches. So he says the roots are found within the spiritual realm and the branches within the physical realm. To summarize, the amount and nature of mitzvot were formulated to correspond to all the different aspects of man and creation. Through the observance of various mitzvot, man perfects himself and consequently the entire creation. So again, it's very important. We read it, but we have to really believe it. We have to understand what's going on. I fulfill a mitzvah. I'm nice to my fellow man. I don't cheat in business. I put on my tefillin, I light Shabbos candles. Whatever the mitzvot are going to be. I don't kill, I don't murder, I don't steal, I don't lie. I don't speak Lashon Hara.
And I didn't have a cheeseburger today.
Baruch Hashem. You don't realize that that's something. And why didn't you have it? If you didn't have it, by the way, this also becomes something for all those people out there. The fact I didn't have a cheeseburger, it could be one of two things. One, I don't like cheeseburgers. Could be something maybe I had a cheeseburger one time and I said I don't like it, or it has a taboo. I don't want to do it. Or it could be, I would love, and this is what the Gemara says, you're supposed to say, I would love to have a cheeseburger. I would love to have lobster. I would love to have all these things that are forbidden. I wish I could. I wish I could have committed adultery. But what can I do? God said no, and therefore I have to follow it. That's it. If I'm doing it because God said so, as compared to, it makes sense to me, that's all the difference in the world. And that's people don't get. That people don't want to get, and they don't want to follow that. Because that's Devekas. I'm doing because God said so.
You're connected.
Right. That's it. It doesn't have to make sense to me. And if it does, great. But that shouldn't be the why I don't do it or why I do it.
I was thinking of, doing it like a 12-step group. Giving a coin so many months without a cheeseburger.
There you go.
Because I'm up to a good chunk of time now.
Okay. But again, if you're doing it because Hashem said so, every single cheeseburger you once had in your life, you get credit for.
Ooh.
The other way.
Yeah, well, that's why I don't eat them.
There you go. Okay. Build up that credit. There you go.
Because Hashem says no.
That's what it has to be. So we will now explain some of them, those that are more relevant and applicable to any place and any time. So it says, obviously, one type of service that brings a person close to Hashem is the offering of a sacrifice in the Beis HaMikdash, but the Ramchal is interested in discussing those types of voda, which can still be done today. So we're going to get practical.
Yeah, if we dynamite that silly dome.
No, that wouldn't do it. See, you're wrong again.
We'd have to build.
No. We have to understand it has to be from Hashem, but we have to merit it. Again, the only reason that we're not all in Israel at this very moment is because we don't do the mitzvot that would get us there. And we don't want to go either. We don't want to go. We like it in America. We like it in Germany. We like it in Galus. Every Galus we enjoy because we don't have the responsibilities. Imagine if I was in Israel, all of those mitzvot I could fulfill, that I would be obligated to fulfill. And then I don't. Then Hashem looks at me and says, what's going on? It's comparable to a child goes out on their own. They go to college, and they're independent. What happens? Like all good college kids, they find out that their degree is worthless. And so they end up back at mom and dad's house. Okay, what happens? They come back and they think, well, they were independent in the dormitory. They can do the same thing here. And the first time they try that, the parents say, doesn't work like that. You came back, you have to follow my rules. You don't have to come back, but if you want to come back and you're always welcome to come back, you need to follow my rules. Whatever those rules are, you have to accept them. What happens? So the kid comes and maybe negotiates a little, but otherwise, okay, I'll do it. Then the first time they break a rule, And the parents, either they come down hard, or they say, we have this conversation, right? It's not going to take too long before either the parents say, get out, or the child buckles down, or the child leaves on their own. So, do we want that for Israel? The answer is no, God forbid. We don't want to be kicked out of Israel again. We know that it's only our actions, only what we do with Hashem that's going to control that. If either we follow Torah or we don't. Simple as that. It's a simple equation. And if we're ready to follow Torah as Klal Yisrael, as the entire people, so then we should go back. And we shouldn't be afraid of it. And there's nothing that's going to stop us. I told you 1,000 times. The day that the Israeli government goes Shomer Shabbos, as the halacha would call for it, not as the Mesurti or the movement wants to suggest it should be, and it's willing to say what Torah says within, again, let the rabbis, the Gedolim talk about what the Torah is supposed to say, not some little shrimp who decided he's going to say something. I'm interested in listening to that. But if we're following Torah, no bomb, no Arab, no anything can stop us, because Hashem would say, that's all I wanted. That's all I wanted. Follow the rules. It's a simple thing. And nobody listens to me. Everybody says, he's a rabbi, he has to say these things.
The meal offerings I can handle, but finding all those bullocks in a given year.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
That thing of thanking God that you're not a woman, that you're not a slave.
Right.
Because why? Because you're given more obligations and more chances for the Vegas to get closer.
Right, different levels. They have.
You're going up.
Listen, same thing. When we say we're not thankful for not making us a woman, the woman, because of her ability to have children, or even if she can't, she's closer to God. Right. She's very connected. So now, how are you guys? So now we're trying to catch up. So we thank God for those obligations.
Chances to.
Right. So that's what. But we have to understand that that's really what's going on. We're on page 476. That's really what's going on. That's really what's going on, and it's so important to say this over and over, and to really hear it and to believe it, because that's the whole thing. You can just grab a chair. Okay. I'd say sit down, just grab it now. There you go. Okay. So now the Ramchal begins his explanation of the influence of Torah study. The study of Torah is essential, because without it, one cannot arrive at proper performance of the mitzvot. The Gemara states, great is Torah study, for it leads to observance. So again, here's something very important. And this you said many times, Bill, the problem with coming to these classes is you know what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't do it, now we're in trouble. Right? You said that.
Ignorance is
right, ignorance is bliss. So what happens is, once I learn what I'm supposed to be doing, and I don't, Hashem says, whoa, you knew what was being asked of you. You knew the rule and you didn't want to? What's going on here? Doesn't make sense. Now, you could always argue that a person has to be convinced that what they're studying is worthwhile to believe in, not just for intellectual knowledge. But what the Ramchal is not talking to some not religious person out there. He's talking to a person who is religious, so already convinced. So when I'm already convinced, as I am, and now I look at the stuff and I see it, so I'm obligated, once I see it, let's follow the rules, which is why I always tell people they should learn the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the abridged form of the Code of Jewish Law. Go through it every year, see what's going on, see the whole spectrum. And if you have a question on one particular thing, or two of 20, let's discuss it. But at least know it. That's all. At least know what's going on, and then you can start living a good Jewish life. And by the way, if I would be talking to the other movements, I would say let them take their law books and let them learn their law books. Because learn all their stuff, see what they do. At least have a reason for what you're doing. If you're not going to have cheese with a hashgacha, according to the conservative, at least know why, and go through the argument. Know it well. Because when you're asked by God, why do you listen to them? You can't say because the rabbi said so. Who's the rabbi? Leave me alone. You have to have some sort of rationale for that. Again, if it's a major question where I don't know anything, fine. But when there's something that I should know, I'm studying, it's Torah, so I have to know it. So then it says, for one who is not, for if one does not know what he is commanded to do, how will he be able to fulfill the mitzvah? Thus, the Torah, in one sense, is a preparatory activity that enables one to perform mitzvot. However, in this chapter, the Ramchal will primarily address a different aspect of the Torah, namely the importance of Torah as study as an end within itself. Okay, so he says, now, however, besides for all this, the study of Torah plays a fundamental role towards one perfecting himself. And he says, besides the knowledge to fulfill mitzvot acquired through the study of Torah, learning Torah is significant in its own right, even if a person never has the opportunity to apply the information he studied to perform mitzvot. So Rav Chaim Friedlander adds that perfection gained through Torah study is greater than perfection gained through all the other mitzvot. Why? Why would that be true? I can't hear you.
You don't know what you're doing?
I don't know what I'm doing? Is that what you said?
What's the reason to study it if you don't know what you're doing? Is that the
No, what he's saying, if I study the Torah,
Yeah.
but I study let's say, again, we're not living in Israel, so if I would learn the laws of agriculture right now, I would take the Zeraim, the Gemara, the Yerushalmis of your Zeraim, and I would learn them all well. Okay, so they're not applicable to me right now because I don't live in Israel. So yet he's saying that itself is allowing me to be perfected. Why?
When you do go to Israel? I don't know.
Okay, when I do go to Israel, that's one. What else?
At least you've learned about it.
I've sensitized myself to it. I'm sensitizing myself. I'm saying, what do people normally think of religion? If you would ask the person, what is religion? They'll tell you, it's a bunch of rules that you have to follow to keep the masses in line. And they're always something spiritual, but there's really nothing practical. So you're going to eat, you recognize, you say a grace before or after the meals, for us, both, okay? But it's something that, or you put tefillin on. Most people forget that Torah tells us how to treat people, how to deal with business, how to plant. You would think that has nothing to do with Torah. How I plant. What do I care how I plant? I'm going to plant tomatoes. I'm going to plant all the other stuff. I'll put everything together. No big deal, right? The answer is no, you can't do that. So we have to we're sensitizing ourselves to that. Hashem is telling us there's nothing in the world that's not connected to Torah in one way or another. So we have to study it all. And yeah, you're right, Shmuel. When we get to Eretz Yisrael, we'll have to follow those laws. But until we get to those laws, until we actually get there, we have to just know them, and they will ultimately connect us with something else. So it's a sensitivity that knowing Hashem is running everything, and also that we're responsible to know all the connections. Yeah.
I could give you an example, like with a child. You teach them manners and how they react to certain situations and what you say and how you treat people of different ages. And they might not understand the reason behind it, but they get into that habit so that when they do see the fuller meaning of all this,
Right.
they already have established those good habits.
Good enough. I like that too. Okay, so it says, we have already mentioned this matter briefly in part 1, chapter 4, and we'll now elaborate upon it further. So it says in section 9, the Ramchal explained that the study of Torah is the most powerful method available for bringing a person close to Hashem. And Rav Chaim Friedlander states that it is extremely worthwhile to study and review the awesome words that follow to gain somewhat of an awareness of what the Torah is. So the Ramchal explains how Torah study is important in its own right. Among the various hashpa'ot that emanate from Hashem for the needs of His creatures, There's one hashpah that stands above all the other hashpahot, whose substance is the most noble and most supreme, and of anything that could possibly be found among the created beings. So he says in part 2, the Ramchal introduced the concept of hashpa'ot, by which Hashem translates his will into action. The Ramchal now describes the effects of Torah study within this context, a topic that was missing in his discussion about Torah study in part 1. So he says the various hashpa'ot of Hashem are manifestations of various aspects of Hashem's presence within the world. The Ramchal now states that there is one hashpah that contains a greater element of holiness than all the other hashpa'ot. This does not mean that Hashem is limited in what he can bestow upon the world. Rather, it is the greatest amount of hashpah that can be accessed by created beings. He says this means that it is the ultimate of what could possibly be found among the created beings, and most resembling Hashem's true existence. This one hashpah gives a person some form of association with Hashem's true essence. It only resembles Hashem's true being, for his actual true being is completely beyond us. And he says, so he continues to say whether it will. Again, this is, I have to say this all together. This means that the ultimate of what could possibly be found among the created beings, most resembling Hashem's true existence, with a nobility and supremacy resembling the true stature of Hashem. It is this hashpah that Hashem imparts for his glory, nobility, and creation, and Hashem bound this hashpah to something he created for this purpose, and that is the Torah. So he explains that hashpah is related to Hashem, and that is of a noble and supernal nature, reflective of Hashem itself. This can be seen from the bracha made upon seeing a Jewish Torah scholar. And we say, blessed are you who has imparted from his wisdom to those who fear him. Hashem gave part of himself, so to speak, to Klal Yisrael, to the Israels. To Israel's. It is also implicit in the words of Chazal, where it says, Hashem, the Torah and Israel are one. Thus, by binding the most noble of hashpahs to the Torah, Hashem enabled people to be associated with this hashpah, that hashpah. The Ramchal states here that it is for this purpose also that Hashem created the Torah, not just for the purpose of teaching to people what they need to know to fulfill the MItzvot. Or Gedaliahu says that this special hashpah mentioned by the Ramchal is a source of the power of life found in the Torah, through which the Tanaim were able to resurrect the dead. Nefesh HaChaim states that whereas everything else in creation, as it develops step by step from its spiritual source until its physical manifestation loses holiness and supernal light, Torah retains its original holiness and a higher spiritual order. And we'll have to stop here.